Hello everyone. So I'm back again with another video. So today we are on day 28 and we are still working on the Active Directory lab. So yesterday we really it wasn't yesterday, it was 2 days ago actually, but in the last video or episode of this series for the Active Directory lab, we answered the question of what is Alice really allowed to access? But today we want to focus on something different. If I didn't watch Alice use the computer with my own two eyes, could I reconstruct what she did from Windows security evidence? And this has a lot to do with the viewer. And I said this is a security analysis, really. So let me just make sure everything looks good and is working. Okay, we look good. The microphone's working, the camera's working, so we're looking good. So the goals are be able to explain what Windows security auditing is. Event ID is 4624 and 4625. Verify whether client O1 audits successful and failed logons. And I'm not going to read through all of those, but these are the goals. So you have them up on screen. Hopefully you can read through them for the most part, leaving it there for a little bit. But the main thing we want to focus on is that event 4624 is a successful logon, and event 4625 is a failed logon. So, if we do a closed book review here, what is the difference between authentication and authorization? Well, authentication has to do with proving your identity. So, like your username, your password, token, it's something that can prove who you are and prove that you're the person you're claiming to be. And then once you've been authenticated, authorization is what you are allowed to do. Um, and then we have this little hierarchy here. AHR, which is Alice's account, the global group for HR, the domain local group for HR, and the HR share. So why aren't we granting Alice permission directly? Well, this is the AG DLP implementation where you have the accounts, the groups, the domain local groups, and the permissions are applied to the domain local groups. So that's just the implementation of that. But the whole purpose of not giving Alice permission directly is because we don't want to touch resource permissions directly on an account. That affects how scalable something is. I've mentioned this a bunch of times, but if we give Alice permissions directly, we're going to have to do the same for 1,000 other people. And that's 1,000 other people that we're going to have to go in manually and click and edit their permissions. What if we had those 1,000 people all working in finance? That's just 1,000 finance workers in the company, even if that's not realistic. We can move them into a different group if they move transition like sectors, or if they leave the company, or if they get promoted to something, we can just move them into a group where they get the specific permissions that they need for their role. What is the difference between an SMB share permission and an NTFS permission? Well, SMB is the server message block. The directories and content over a network to a shared folder, and then NTFS is like the direct files and folders on the disk, and you can like click and give them like the modify, edit, access, all that. So yeah, a little bit more here. It's all review, all review. I don't think we need to go through all of that, so we should be good. So the first is learning the new concept. What is the new concept of the day for this Active Directory lab? And it's moving from configuring the security, where we kind of enabled the log, to actually observing activity on the machine, collecting the evidence, interpreting the evidence, and reconstructing what occurred. So we have a scenario here. Your manager tells you, hey, Alice's account may have had suspicious authentication activity at 11:42 p.m., but I wasn't there. I was asleep, getting ready for the next day where I got to wake up and get my day going. So I was asleep, and I can't ask Windows if Alice was hacked. Windows isn't going to tell me, but I have the evidence. One source that we can use is the Windows security log, and the two events we're going to need for this today are 462 and 4625. So this is going to be the main part of the lab that we kind of pushed forward today. So The event ID tells you what occurred. We know 4624 is a successful authentication, and 4625 is a failed authentication, but there are logon types that help. So, first off, 2 is interactive. It means like they're sitting at the screen and they logged in with the mouse and keyboard, like blah, 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 and they either got it right or wrong. 3 is the network, accessing resources over the network, opening a shared folder, or accessing a printer. And 10 is remote interactive, so that could be a remote session using RDP. So today I kind of did it like challenges where I had to figure stuff out instead of just doing like, oh, let me just search this up and then make like my own little documentation. No, I gave myself challenges and objectives that I really needed to complete. So the first one is to determine whether client O1 is currently configured to record both successful and failed user logons. So, first off, what auditing category should logically contain user logon activity? That is not what I'm meant to open the virtual machine. So first off, in the event viewer, we can see that there's application, security, and system, and your logs are going to be in the security channel. And then if I head over to my server virtual machine, go all insert. So if we come over here, sorry, I was in that as well. If we go to tools, and then if we go to group policy management, if we go to GPO workstation, okay, wrong thing. I need to go to edit. So in Windows settings, and then in security settings, and then we go to advanced policy configuration. What is going on here? Oh, there we go. We finally get the sidebar. I was wondering, where's the sidebar? So then audit policies, and then there's log on slash log off. So audit log on is the one we want, and then it's obviously we want log on successes when the log on succeeds and the failure. So that is the answer to that. Is success enabled? So if you wanted to test if success is enabled, all you do is you go on your client VM and you log on to an account. If it shows up in the logs, you're golden. It's enabled. And it's the same thing for failed. You go onto your client VM and you fail the login, just enter like an incorrect password on purpose and look for the 4625. So right here we can filter for the 4625. I had both of them. But here we filter for the 4625 and you can see that we get failed login attempts. I'll show you like this one's for Alice and the failure reason is unknown username or bad password. So I obviously entered the credentials wrong. So that's how you can do that part. And then moving on, if one isn't enabled, how should your existing? So I kind of showed you how it should be modified. So you're going through there, you're turning that on, and you want success and failure. And then once you do that, you would have to come back over to here, and there's some commands. So if you remember this from last time, in order to update the policy instead of waiting for the automatic refresh, you're going to use gp update slash force, and then that will forcefully reapply the group policy. And then once this loads, sorry, my virtual machines are so slow. GP result slash R, not the C drive slash R, and then this will show you the group policy is applied. I will show you up here. Where's it at? Should be right over here. Applied group policy objects, and you can see that the workstation that we added is applied. And then how can you prove well, GP result like I just said, and then doing the testing and making sure the event logs are there. So challenge 2 is generating evidence, and let me scroll down to that. So The scenario we have now is Alice tries to authenticate to client O1 once with an incorrect and later authenticates successfully. So for these two questions, it's very simple. If you want to generate a controlled failed authentication, you're going to log on to AHR account using a wrong password. And then if you want a successful one, just log on using the right password, and it's going to give you the logs in the event viewer. And then which machine should have evidence? In this case, it's going to be the client PC because this is all happening locally. And I added a little self note right here. So I'm thinking like, okay, so why am I using this server if I can't, like manage all the logs from there? Well, because I'm learning, I'm not an expert, so I don't know the exact answer to everything. But I wanted to know, hey, why is this happening? Like, what is the point of all that, right? So I said IT would get these logs centrally, and that's true. They would get all their logs centrally, and they'd be able to then investigate the machines and isolate them depending on, if it needs to be escalated to that level. But I'm currently checking the client O1 logs locally, which will be developed further later on. So later on in these series, I will be able to actually do central security management. But as of right now, no, that will not be happening. Just to look at our last videos real quick. So I'm happy that video 4, episode 4 of the series was able to get 8 views. That's pretty cool. It's a double the 4 views we got on that, but these two definitely doing the best so far. So I need to see what I can do to maybe push out more views and maybe get some more subscribers on the channel. So obviously, the event IDs I expect are first, it should be a 4625 event because this is a failed authentication, and then a 4624 because that is a successful authentication. And then when you're doing your analysis, right? So let's say you have the event viewer here and you see 4625. You can take the time, which is also up here, and you can write that down in your documentation because it is important to document things like that. Some more self notes. So actually, for one of our, I'm not gonna look for it, but I'll actually just show you some 4624s. So when we have a 4624, the logon type is going to be there. Let me find one that we actually care about. Let me actually just go to it. It was what, at 6:40, 5:40. Sorry, I've been doing this lab for quite some time now. I've been working on cyber for around 3 hours today. Okay, so it should be 5:48:58. So log on type 11. So remember, I said log on type 2 is you're sitting at the keyboard. So now I got a log on type 11. I'm like, what? Shouldn't it be a 2? And that's because log on type 11 is a cached interacting logon. And Windows is letting a user log in using cached domain credentials. And all that means is it's previously saved logon credentials. That's all you need to worry about with that. And then another one, logon type 7 is unlocked when someone unlocks an existing session. So for the next challenge, investigate. So if we're looking at those events, we're obviously gonna look in and see what they have. So we wanted to find evidence supporting the statement that she first failed to authenticate and later did it successfully, and record the fields that were there. So we have some fields here. So keyword is an audit failure. We have the date and time, the source, the event ID. And then I just picked a few random ones to go over. So logon type 2, the account name that failed, and then the failure reason, which I pointed out earlier. So it failed due to a unknown username or bad password. And then for her successful logon attempt, we can actually look at that here. So you can see that it's an audit success, the date and time, the source, the event ID, and the task complete. But let's look here. So we have the account name, the account domain here. And then we have the account name here. The domain logging on is obviously Kevin Lab. Uh, I like the workstation name because because that shows, okay, they're using client O1, that's specific PC they're using. And then I didn't really go over and define many of the other ones yet. But that is what I did so far for that. Just going over some of the fields and kind of making sure we get a feel for what will be shown in those type of logs. Okay, so now we're almost done this episode, getting to the end. So this goes back to this point here. It kind of led me into some more self diving because I wanted to figure out like how the logs specifically work. My bad for that. So currently in my whole lab, I have client O1 and then the domain controller. And a reminder that a domain controller is a Windows server running Active Directory, and the main thing it's doing right now is authenticating the users, and then that goes down the rabbit hole with things like Kerberos and LDAP, which we will not be talking about right now. But the question I had is, would these two computers necessarily record identical evidence? Because that was the little problem I had. And to some of you, this might be like, is this guy dumb? Like, it's pretty obvious no. And the answer is no, but I'm learning this. So one is the workstation where the activity is happening. That's the client PC that Alice, quote unquote Alice, would be using. And then one is providing domain services. So the challenge is to investigate both the logs around the test time, and we already did the client O1 logs. I showed you some of them. But when we go on the Windows server and look at the event logs, which are here at the same time, we see that it has nothing to do with the logon of that other device. So for example, here, the logon successful here. I'm trying to find one with a logon code that would make sense. Log off. There's a log off here. Doesn't seem to be an account that we actually use though. An account was successfully logged on. Log on 3. It's not what we need. An account was logged off. Ah, hate log on 3. Okay. But the whole point I'm trying to make here is that this isn't anything to do with, it proves my point. This isn't anything to do with the client. So they're different because they play different roles, right? Client O1 is what's happening on the workstation, and SRV DCO1 is what the domain controller is doing. And that can be authenticating the different use. So maybe that's what the special privileges are doing. I'm not sure. I didn't deep dive into it. It was just to prove that they're different. It's my little investigation. Now, I wanted to do a little test with PowerShell and seeing how I could view security logs with PowerShell because I feel like it's good to be good with both. But so obviously I had to go through and find these commands on my own. But the first one I did was get win event log name security, and I type it wrong. I am a noob. And you can see this will go on forever, right? And that's not going to be very helpful to us. So my next pivot from there was, okay, how can I only show 10 logs? Get win event log name security max events 10. And then what that's going to do is it's going to show 10 of the most recent events. But then it's like, okay, but I want to see 10 events, which are only the 4624 and 4625, which are the failed and successful logons. So then, if you want to do that as well, you have to use this filter hash table command. I don't know why. This is what I found in my research. Security. I'm going to try and move this over for you guys a bit. Security. And then ID equal 4624 4625 because those are the IDs we want. And then max events 10. And then that will give you 10 of the most recent events for those IDs. And then most recent ones were obviously 4624. So that is all I have for today's episode. I think I was able to get a lot of good work done today, and I hope to see you guys in future episodes. If you have any suggestions of what I could do, if you want to connect or work with me, if you have any ideas for the AD lab or future labs or any advice, please let me know. To update you guys with the job search, I do not think I'm going to do that IT assistant position. I just don't like the conditions of it. I have applied to one more IT job so far, and I actually plan to do one more session after this video. So that's gonna be the plan. Do one more job application session after this video, maybe 30 minutes to an hour, getting in a good app and then messaging the people. I find that more productive than applying to like 5 places in a day, then none of them respond. At least I message someone and they give me a response. And I find that much better than applying to 5 places and getting nothing. So that's what I have. Video two. There will definitely be a video tomorrow. There's no chance that I don't get a video out tomorrow. So definitely a video tomorrow. Be prepared for some theory, like me kind of being like a professor type of videos soon. I'm looking into doing some of that. So can't wait to see you guys for some of those videos. But yeah, thank you for watching, and this will be uploaded soon, episode 5 of the AD Lab. Peace.